And hello, Bills Mafia. That red light is on, which means this week's episode is officially live. And as we dawn upon another holiday season, we must first unwrap the gift that is the Buffalo Bills' massive 31-10 victory over the Dallas Cowboys. One that, at least the way it panned out, I don't think any of us saw coming, but we're certainly not complaining. And joining me today is Cover One's video coordinator, Adam Pensel, as we preview the Chargers game and look back on this amazing Dallas Cowboys blowout. Thank you all so much for being here today on this week's episode of Under Review. Let's go, go, go. Merry Christmas.
Previous play will go under review.
Let's see now. All right. Adam, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right, cool. Yeah, little technical difficulty on my end happens from time to time, but everybody, thank you again so much for being here for this week's episode of Under Review. This is going to be a really fun discussion. And listen, it's a holiday themed episode. Like I said, we got a gift to unwrap, but first I'm going to introduce my guest. He is the video coordinator here at Cover One. Adam, why don't you let the people know where they could find you and what you got going on?
Yeah, so I'm the video coordinator at Cover One, as Joe said. You can find me on Twitter. My handle's right there in the screen at Sharp and Pencil. Been doing this for a couple of years now for Cover One, and just a big fan of helping out with the film, kind of learning what we can uncover with that. Obviously, we have a lot of guys who do an incredible job with that here, right here at Cover One. And then I'm a little bit of a stats geek as well. I'd really love to dive into the analytics. Learn about things there. That's opened up some opportunities for me to have access to certain resources for stats and whatnot. And you'll see me kind of digging that stuff up on a pretty regular basis on Twitter each week based on the Bills' opponents. So, if you're interested in that stuff, give me a follow. I'd love to have you along.
And yeah, you all should be following him. I mean, when it comes to the work that happens on this network, a lot of post-game stuff, the stuff you're seeing on the film room, really just a ton of data contribution from this network comes from Adam, which is why I'm really excited to have him here tonight, because we've been trying to make this happen for a few weeks. And, I love your insight, post-game insight, pre-game insight, everything that you're able to kind of give context to as the week goes on. So really looking forward to discussing this last game and this upcoming game with you. But before we do that, I had to pull up this comment because Spin seems very excited about Mr. DaQuan Jones. Yeah. I'm very excited about DaQuan Jones. His practice window officially opened up today. So, Adam, real quick before we get into it, talk to me about this. How big is this for the Bills embarking on what might be a big playoff run?
Yeah, it's massive. I put out a tweet today about this, actually. DaQuan Jones, I said it can't be overstated what he meant to this defensive line and what he could mean to this team moving forward. At the point that he went down with his injury, he was leading the Bills' defensive line, that's ends and tackles, in multiple pass rush metrics, including pass rush win rate. He was number one in average distance to the quarterback. That was kind of a newer stat that NFL Next Gen Stats was tracking. So he was, a big part of the engine that really drove that defensive line. And, I was really concerned about how the defensive line was going to look when he dropped off. We saw in the playoff game last year when he was a very kind of unexpected, inactive against the Bengals, just how difficult it was for the Bills to really do anything stopping the run. And, but credit to Ed Oliver and the rest of the defensive line. Leonard Floyd has been a big part of that as well. They've really kind of found a way to hang in there. They haven't been as potent as they were, without DaQuan Jones in the lineup, but they've really done a nice job. So I can't wait to see what this looks like when he comes back in the lineup. If he's healthy and strong, look out, because, this team, his presence is a multiplier in terms of what it means to how this defense performs on a statistical basis. So I'm very excited about it, and the fan base should be as well.
I agree. And you've been able to see them kind of stop the bleeding from his loss because of Ed Oliver's kind of, it's weird to say emergence because he was already a good defensive tackle, but kind of him really, really starting to take shape as a top defensive tackle in the league for really a value contract. So because of that, it's not so much that we didn't miss DaQuan Jones, but rather you were able to soften the blow and kind of survive without him. However, like you said, it can't be overstated his importance to this Bills defensive line, this defense in general, what he's able to offer you on the interior with his ability to kind of eat those double teams, get off of them and blow up runs in the backfield, the ability to get to the quarterback and just wreak havoc in the middle with Ed Oliver by his side. It is a massive addition if he is able to come back. And it really does, in my opinion, make games like Saturday and games like next Sunday against New England all the more important because he's not playing this weekend. That they're going to have him back next or possibly not having him back next week. In my opinion, he would either be stashed for that Miami game unless he's really genuinely not ready to play yet. For that reason, that you have to win these two games means that you get the ace in the hole back. You get that player to come onto your defensive line, be there to be a presence in the playoffs, provide that spark that you don't really, it's not so much you don't need it, but just getting an additional playmaker back to coincide with this really good defensive front. I'm super pumped to see it. I know he's super pumped. He's posted about it on Twitter, Instagram. Like we are seeing DaQuan Jones back in the news cycle, and it makes me very, very happy. And I'm sure Bills fans like Spin and like the members of our comments section, like RJ, what's up, and all of you friendly people here are very excited to see it. So, Mr. DaQuan Jones, if you are somehow watching this show on a Tuesday night, welcome back. We're so excited to see you in a Bills form yet again. But Adam, let's move on and let's talk about what we're here to talk about today, the first half of our show, and that is the Bills versus the Cowboys. And last week, Jesse and Holly and I kind of went over this game, kind of just talked about like really a Cowboys team that was surging, firing on all cylinders. Offense was clicking. Dak looked like an MVP candidate. Opportunistic defense, right? And, this was one of those games where, considering the momentum shift of the Bills winning in Kansas City, you felt like they had a fair shot. They were favored. You saw complete play, really good defensive performance, but tall task when you have a 10-3 team coming to your building. Not only do they win, they dominate them. And capital D, dominate Dallas Cowboys with just exceptional performances from James Cook, the offensive line, the defensive line, really not a single person on that team who didn't contribute in a positive way. So let me just hear your initial thoughts on this game and what you really enjoyed about it the most.
Yeah, well, I think the obvious thing is just how surprising the game was to everyone in terms of the game script and with the way things went, right? Obviously James Cook has been playing tremendous ball, right? But I don't think anyone would have been going into the night thinking that Josh Allen was only going to have 15 pass attempts. That was, I think, the biggest shocker to me at the end of the day was seeing that happen. And then also, early on, the Bills come out, they have a tremendous drive. They get a little bit of break on the penalty there, but they score right off the bat. And the Cowboys come out, and I think it was second down. They go for that shot play, right, downfield that they narrowly missed. And I thought, oh boy, here we go. This looks like it might end up being a heavyweight tilt, especially if Dallas is going to be trying to take those downfield shots like that. But after that, the Bills really, they didn't connect there, and the Bills just had everything wrapped up. So I went into this game expecting a very, very tight match. I thought that this was going to be one of those games that's going to be, a 2 or 3 point difference at the end of the night, and we'll see how things go. So I was obviously tremendously pleased with the final outcome, and seeing the Bills put something a little bit different on tape. Let's be honest, a lot different on tape than what we've seen a Josh Allen football team really be in the past.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was one point that I think Steve made yesterday that I think should be kind of reinforced today. This was a game that I think you needed to see from this team, considering the circumstances of who they played and the weather that they played in. Now, it wasn't a torrential downpour like Jerry Jones thought it was. It was a light rain mixed with some heavier rain later in the game when it was kind of already out of reach for the Cowboys. But what I think this team has really tried to establish over the past couple of years is this balance of knowing that you have this type of game in your belt if you need it for when these circumstances arise, right? So like if a game has heavy winds like that New England game a couple years ago, or if you're talking about snow or something that kind of hinders your best weapon, which is Josh Allen's arm, then you need to have something to pivot to. What I absolutely loved about this game was it felt like, one, you saw the emergence of James Cook, not just because of how good this offensive line was blocking for him, but his vision, his patience, his athleticism, all of those things were on display. So you're getting the benefit of seeing Cook's game blossom. But two, you realize that this team understands the situation now, and specifically Joe Brady, which we can get more into, Adam. Joe Brady sees this game, sees the matchup, sees the Dallas personnel, knows that they aren't pivoting, and continues to attack them with downhill blocking from their tackles that they continued to pull all game. It was amazing. And I feel like now that you have a team that can do both, especially, record be damned, they're playing a really good brand of football right now. Going into the playoffs, you have that in your back pocket for where if you run into a Chiefs-like defense, or even the Chiefs, and they happen to shut your passing attack down, you have this ability to run and really run well. So I'm curious just what you think about Brady, how he kind of tailored his game plan and how he handled the game situations.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Going into this game, well, even after this game, really, like it's not like Dallas has glaring issues defending the run. Statistically, they're kind of like an above-average team in run blocking. And, I think Joe Brady's comments to the media and his availability this week immediately after the game really kind of spoke to the fact that it wasn't like a serious, dedicated game plan to come out and continuously run the ball the way that they did. What happened was they had success early, and Joe Brady was willing to continue to call the same play over and over and over again and not deviate away from what was working. And I think, in comparing him to Ken Dorsey, I think that that's where these two offensive coordinators are really kind of polar opposites from one another. I think Ken Dorsey, based on his track record here, appeared to be the type of coordinator that said, this is what we do best, and I'm going to lean on this no matter what. And this is what we want to do. This is how we want to attack. And we have Josh Allen. We have Stephon Diggs. We have incredible athletes. And even if we run basic concepts that are predictable, our superior athleticism is going to win the day at the end of the day. And, on a rate basis, this is something that we got into a lot. Like, it did work on a rate basis a lot, but the predictability also made them highly susceptible to turnovers. And, we saw how that affected them in certain games as the season went on. And so, Joe Brady to me is the exact opposite of that. He is always seemingly scheming players open. He's not afraid to, continue to lean on one thing that works well, even if it's running the football. And I think that's tremendously important because the Bills for 4 or 5 years in Josh Allen's tenure have always shown a tendency to want to get back to passing the ball, because they just want to let Josh air it out. And now, I think this was a statement game really for the Bills offense, more so than even just beyond of proving that if we get a bad weather game, they can do it. I think they can do it and they will do it if you're not going to do something to stop it. And that means that moving forward, teams are going to have to start dedicating more resources coming down low, covering the backs coming out of the backfield, which again is going to conversely start to open up things downfield. Eventually, we're going to see it. So just tremendously pleased with the way Joe Brady is calling things right now. And I think it's going to be a difference maker. What he's put on tape is going to make the difference as we go deeper and deeper into this season.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. And I think, again, talking about Brady in contrast to Ken Dorsey, that was ultimately what seemed to be the main problem with him, right? Wasn't so much that he didn't know how to call plays. He didn't know how to create matchups. It was more just reading the game situation and kind of understanding when I need to mix things up because this isn't working versus kind of an over-reliance on the same concepts and the same things that teams have probably seen on film over and over again until you were like forced to make a pivot when it was either too late or they were in dire straits and were kind of desperate to get a scoring drive going. And that's what a lot of those games felt like earlier in the year. And I think back to this Denver game where drives continue to stall out. You're letting a team at the time that was, struggling hang around. and then they end up scoring going ahead. And now it's like we have to force it and just like run the ball down their throat because nothing else was working. It feels like now you're seeing a better understanding of in-game situations where, okay, we tried this, it didn't work, we're within reach. Why don't we try to pivot back over to the run and try to mix things up? And also, if we have one player that's really doing well with whatever it is we're calling, let's keep relying on them. And like one of my favorite examples is that final drive where the Bills took the lead, or tied the game, or I'm trying to think back to it, before they went to overtime against Philadelphia, where they started running the ball a lot more heavily. And you saw kind of this explosion because it was understanding that this wasn't working. We need to go to it. But it didn't feel like it was too late or that they waited until they were down by 2 possessions. It was, yeah, I understand that they've changed how they're defending this. I got to move to this. And that feels so much more rejuvenating when you watch this team's offense and feel like they're actually, there's a pulse and that they have this ability to recognize and go. But one other thing that I really love about the way Brady is calling these games, and I made a joke yesterday, and I appreciate that you laughed at it because no one else laughed at it, and it made me very upset. It was, Ken Dorsey will make you a part of the game plan when he wants to freaking make you a part of the game. Or Ken Dorsey, Joe Brady wants to make you a part of the game plan. We talked about Gabe Davis, right? So Philadelphia is 105 yards and the past couple of games, literally 0. Granted, he should have been targeted. We'll get, we don't have to cross that bridge again, but Allen should have hit him in that Kansas City game. It feels like there's also a concerted effort to just get the ball in someone's hands if they feel that this is the best case to handle the defense. And it might not mean Allen having to throw 30 times or Allen having to be the star of the show, but rather someone on this offense that he feels is the X factor getting the ball. Do you agree with this?
Yeah, well, I think ultimately at the end of the day, he's willing to play the cards that are being dealt to him, right? It's that different mindset. Like some offensive coordinators want to be aggressive and say, we're gonna set this tone and we're gonna do this. And I think other offensive coordinators, and this is who I think Joe Brady is willing to say, okay, you're gonna defend this way. I'm willing to adjust my offense to attack you this way. And he even said this in his presser again this week. He talked about how ultimately the way that you set up your offense is you find the weaknesses of the opposing defense that are complementary to the things that your particular offense does well, right? And again, leaning on the things that are working in the game and not deviating away from them when you know that Dallas is unable or unwilling to adjust means that you're actively watching and responding to what is happening on the other side of the field to give you a leg up. And that to me is the thing that I'm just most encouraged by with Joe Brady. And McDermott has even referenced it in his press conferences as of late. He talked about the communication that he hears on the headsets during the games between the offensive staff, and Eric and Anthony have highlighted it in the film room multiple times where, the Jets game, for example, when they were dropping a lineman into coverage, right? And they tweaked some plays to allow Josh to run a draw or get a passing lane open, specifically targeting that adjustment that the Jets made. And this is just something that we haven't seen since really Dable has been here. And, knowing that there's a guy in the room who is willing and able to do that, it makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah. And I like this comment from Steve here too, because he says, obviously Brady got the guys pumped about running the ball that much, which was awesome. Yeah. But that's what it felt like. And that's what you saw, because it wasn't even just a matter of, we're going to make an effort to run the ball. Like these guys were amped after their blocks, not just the lineman, but I distinctly remember that same play that Dawkins carried the linebacker 20 yards downfield. There's a clip of Sherfield just pumping his fist, like gassed up because he saw the run go down. And Sherfield's an exceptional run blocker, so there's pride in that. But that's the thing that I'm really enjoying seeing from Joe Brady, and this Cowboys game kind of being a microcosm of it is like, it's not always going to be like the sexy stats for Josh Allen and like we're going to make him this, primary guy that he has to do all the running and passing and everything's an accessory. No, man, sometimes he's the supporting cast, and that's okay, because if a good offense goes up against a good defense but has all these aces in the hole to play with, then they can continue their streak and ultimately make a run. And that's making me really excited for a potential playoff push. Like I tweeted about it today, like the fact again that you have this in your arsenal and you've seen it work, and maybe tougher defenses that are a little more hard-nosed might bear down on this a bit more. But the fact that we're getting this kind of positive development from James Cook as a result of making concerted efforts to get him the ball, that's awesome. And that is just something that I'm really looking forward to seeing more of. And Adam, I want to just ask you more about James Cook. I mean, like, we talked a little bit about him, but what are you liking from him? What are you seeing from him? Like, what do you think has improved from last year to this year as far as his game?
Well, I think number one, just in the pure running side of things, he's more decisive on picking his spots and and attacking it. He's always had this natural kind of fluidity to his running where he is deceptively fast. His stride frequency isn't like that of a back that looks like his feet are flying, but he has great speed just because he's so fluid. He reminds me of maybe like his running style is very similar to like Alvin Kamara, in that way. His ability to get those quick cuts and evade, that's kind of always been the base layer of his game. But I think the biggest areas that he's really improved upon this year are being more decisive and hitting the spot and going. And that is allowing him to break tackles when they do come at him more early because he's building up his momentum quicker. Not that he had to do a lot of that in the last game because I think it was like 4.8 yards before contact or something against Dallas, which is like crazy. Kudos to the offensive line for an unbelievable job. But even in the games that they haven't had the ability to block that well, he's come up with some pretty substantial yards after contact because he is not hesitating at hitting the hole that he needs to hit when he is handed the ball. So to me, that's like the biggest adjustment for him as a young back. And then in the passing game, his hands, he flashed that in college. That was, I think, one of the main reasons why the Bills wanted to draft him. And now they're getting him involved in that way, way beyond, I think, what any of us could have ever dreamed, it would have looked like last year, because it seemed like that was another thing that Ken Dorsey kind of really struggled with, was finding ways to get these backs involved in the passing game other than, a basic wheel route that, hey, if it was open, Josh will toss it to him. And if not, nothing's happening, So to me, that's been his biggest area of improvement this season.
And again, all the work that goes into kind of setting Cook up on those routes too, right? So like last time it used to be with Dorsey, like a lot of that time, like, again, you said the wheel route, but a wheel route that just kind of was there. We chalk it up based on this coverage. Someone will eventually bear down on it unless they somehow don't. Then you hit it. And it's like, you hope he gets the opportunity, but it's not really being schemed up for him, versus now these concerted efforts to move people around and kind of use digs to decoy people to one side of the field. So Cook has an open spot on the field to just be, able to get the ball. And that happened multiple times. And that's so great to see. But as far as his actual running, I think my favorite part about it is, again, like the development of his vision, seeing the fact that he can recognize when something is taken away from him, like there's a gap he can't run through, and bouncing like right on the whim to bounce to a different direction. Like, oh, this block didn't get off correctly. This is going to be, blown up. If I go here, I have to do this. And like this, I respect the running back position so much, and anyone who can make these decisions that quickly. Cause like when you watch it back and you slow it down, you see like a block going a certain way. And to us, it's like, well, I've had, the 30 seconds to kind of keep watching this over and over again. So I see why he chooses this lane. He's doing this in real time. And like the fact that you could go from, oh shit, like this guy's coming on this way, I got to go here. But also, I think what is even more impressive about it is, like, again, his lateral agility, like the fact that he can bounce so quickly from in to out or out to in, and just like go and have that post acceleration that just gets him like a 5-6 yard pace before he's brought down. Like, it is so much fun to watch him run. It's fun to see him running with confidence. And I think, while again, I want to keep giving the credit to James Cook because he deserves it, that's also a testament to the line and like how good the run blocking has been this year. Like, I want to ask you, just like, talk to me about this offensive line. Like, we've kind of had brief discussions about it since this game ended and just how good it's been this year. But what do you think about it? Like, how have they improved as well?
Doesn't it feel like it was almost years ago now that we were in August and everyone was so concerned about Spencer Brown? And I'm not trying to bash the fan base because I am
Hands
in
up.
that, right? I mean, I think we all were, right? It was that we were at that point in time, I think there were a lot of things to feel good about with the offensive line. We knew that, Deion Dawkins was going to be consistent. We knew Mitch Morse was going to be consistent. The wild cards really, were the guards, right? And
Yeah.
Josh Allen and this offensive line, this is the first time really since the 2020 season that the Bills have had like a top 5 offensive line. And we saw how good that offense was in 2020 when Josh had all day to stand there. Like he used to showboat and bounce and drop onto his heels and wait for somebody to uncover before he'd get back on his toes and let something rip. And, the game's changed a little bit because the way teams are defending nowadays. So you don't see that as much. But the fact that they can both pass block and run block so effectively is something to be incredibly excited about because, how many times have we seen it? Usually the best teams that go all the way are the ones that are able to win in the trenches consistently. And for that to be something that we don't have to worry about as much as a fan base at this point in time, knowing that we've got that going for us really on both sides of the ball right now, especially with DaQuan Jones coming back in the future, is something to be really, really excited about.
And Spencer Brown's development as a pass protector is great. I still think, it's not perfect, but it's definitely better. And that's what you needed. I mean, I said in the offseason, I just need good from Spencer Brown. I don't need all pro, like best right. I would love it. I would love it. Don't, please, comment section, don't take that as me saying I would not like that. I absolutely would. But more so like, I just need to see there's a positive trend in his development because I feel like that's the missing piece. I remember the chart that came out about grades for offensive linemen and his was like an 8. It's definitely not an 8 anymore, but there was never, definitely not, but there was never a doubt about his run blocking ability because he's a physical freak. He's a great athlete and he can move people. So when you're able to get him in space and be able to get him in one-on-one situations, that's where I thought he was going to thrive this year. And even more so when you add in an O'Cyrus Torrence right next to him, that's able to kind of bolster when they need to double up on somebody or when they need to hold their own or when they need to move downfield. Like these guys are just specimen and able to just get that push at the line that you need. And that's just like some of the byproduct that's led to such a positive trend in the Bills rushing attack, making them one of the top EPA rushing offenses in the league this year. Offenses is. Yeah. I can't believe I just said that word.
Well, it is really incredible. And I think that one other person that I want to mention really is, this is kind of like for the whole line too, but this individual, O'Cyrus Torrence, the way that he's been operating the silent count with Mitch Morse in these road games, it felt like for a little while there, the Bills were taking all of these penalties that were kind of like self-imposed pre-snap penalties, little errors. And I really feel like the line as a whole has cleaned that up to such a high level, over the last few weeks. So it's just nice to see them not getting kind of burnt and beat by their own little mistakes and executing really the basic stuff that you need to be executed at a high level, just, play after play after play. I don't know. To me, when you watch them now, it feels like this is a line in a group that you can rely on consistently, play in and play out. And it's something that you go into every play never feeling like, oh, please don't false start or please don't miss a block. Like they're just so consistent and solid, and man, is it refreshing.
Yeah, and listen, like it's not going to be perfect all the time. Like they're going to get beat by talent. I do think that when they had the opportunity to pass protect, it was hit or miss against Dallas. But again, like it's not the same game plan. You don't know how they would have adjusted if it was a better weather game, if they wanted to pass on the defense more, which I don't think they would have because it's a very good passing defense they faced. But really, and I like that you bring up Mitch Morse too, because Mitch Morse's presence in that room is so massive and how he's able to kind of coach up the people around him. And you're seeing it with O'Cyrus Torrence. Again, just good communication, lack of penalties, this ability to kind of get the most out of him. You see when they team up, it's just like well thought out communication where there's never someone out of place. Like those are the things I like to see. And also shout out to Aaron Cromer, man. Aaron Cromer's got this line buzzing. Hiring him again was just a great move, and you're seeing really a renaissance in this Bills line that we haven't seen since the last time Aaron Cromer was in Buffalo with Rex Ryan. So it's fun. Yeah. I love it very much. Before we pivot to the defensive side, which I'm very excited to talk about, I do want to ask you about one player that's come up a lot this week in discussion, because in the times he's really had to get the ball in his hands, he's flashed and he's been pretty good. And it was a pickup that no one really thought much of when it happened. And now he's becoming a really integral part of the running back room and someone that I think is earning his keep to get more snaps. And that's Ty Johnson. I mean, you're
Yeah.
seeing this fun mix of power, of speed, his ability to catch, but his ability to also just get that burst, especially on like second efforts. Like, what do you think about Ty Johnson? And do you think he's earned the right to be the primary backup behind James Cook?
Yeah, I think I definitely think in certain situations he's the guy that you want to have in there. He is kind of that like bowling ball type runner that they lost in losing Harris earlier this season. But he also adds an element of he's able to be somewhat reliable in catching the ball. And he's got a seemingly higher top speed. He's got a nice speed element to his game as well. So he's been just a lot of fun to see. And it's great that you can have a guy like Cook who makes his cut, finds himself in a crowd, navigates through that crowd at just such an incredibly evasive and high speed pace that drives the defense absolutely crazy. And then when they're demoralized, you can throw Ty Johnson in there, hand him the ball, and he will lower his helmet and just put himself right into a guy's stomach.
Yeah.
And to have both backs that can do both those things. I mean, we saw what it did to the Cowboys, and we've seen what it's done in other games this year. The Bills can now hit you with multiple running styles and really make you hurt, make you pay, make you get frustrated. And we're seeing it over and over and over again. So yeah, I think Latavius Murray certainly has his his high points too, and I think he's still earned his snaps, even though Ty Johnson looks good. I know that he fumbled that ball that Josh threw to him, but Latavius is a really heady player, man. I loved that play against Kansas City where he found his way down the sideline and Josh got him the ball. I know he fumbled it, but he seems to kind of have a nice rapport with Josh and knowing where to go when things break down. And that's flashed a certain amount of times this year. So, on those more, obvious passing downs where he's going to be in there blocking and then kind of shedding out. But certainly I think in terms of purely carrying the ball, yeah, I think it's got to be James Cook and Ty Johnson.
I agree with that. And I think Ty Johnson getting kind of the stats he got in this game, to me, it told me that, like, one, they were primarily focused on running the ball. And two, like you said, I think Murray really gets a lot of his carries and a lot of justification for doing so because of his ability to pass protect, which is very good. So I do want to continue that trend on. And I think as you see them play more teams where they're going to balance the attack of pass and run, you will see Murray, continue to get his snaps, which is why I think if people are clamoring for Johnson over and over again and they keep seeing Latavius Murray, that's probably why you're going to see it. But it's not a knock on him. I still think, it was well worth the money he's being paid. And I'm very happy to have his presence in the room. Happy to see him get a goal line touchdown. I know he's been not on a drought because he broke that drought a few weeks ago, but for a lot of the season, it was struggling to get him an actual rushing touchdown. So nice to see that. And nice to see this running game, again, feel complete with some really awesome formations from Joe Brady, good play calling from Brady, and an exceptional performance from this offensive line and Mr. James Cook. And so before we transition to the defensive conversation, Adam, I have to ask you one very important question. It's a question I ask my guests on the show from time to time, usually around twice a month. And that question for you is, do you like fantasy football by any chance?
Oh my God. Yeah, probably too much. Yeah, my wife will tell you that I enjoy fantasy football too much. So I gotta find time to step away from the stuff more often than I probably do, but I absolutely love it.
Well, I love it too, even though I'm terrible at it, which is why I want to tell you about the easiest way to get some action on the NFL, and it's Underdog Fantasy and their pick'em game. Just pick higher or lower on your favorite or least favorite players' stats, and you can win up to 20 times your money in a single night. Underdog keeps it super simple with their easy-to-use website and mobile apps. Pick between 2 and 5 players to fill out your pick'em entry, get every pick right, and take home some cold, hard cash. Use the code COVER1 and get your first deposit doubled up to $500 by Underdog. And thank you so much to Underdog Fantasy for being a partner and sponsor of Cover1. Now, let us go back to the conversation. Let's get back to the nitty gritty and let's talk about the other star of the show. And that was the Buffalo Bills defense. And man, oh man, did they deliver in this game. Something that, going into it, I had said from my own words, it was going to be a shootout. I thought that we were, I thought Dallas was going to keep that momentum going, even though the points per game wasn't that great on the road, and that we were going to see, them be tested. Not only, again, did they come out and rise to the occasion, they dominated. So let me ask you, what'd you think about this performance, and what did you really like about it?
Yeah, I mean, here we go again. We've had certain instances, this kind of the game plan and the way the defense performed really brought me back to the matchup against Miami earlier in the season, right? Oh boy, where I'm just going to keep going. Where McDermott really was kind of, given his flowers after that game for the way that defense played. The Dolphins coming off of putting up all these points. And now here again, you have this crazy high power passing offense come in. And, I think everybody had some level of concern about it because certainly after all the defensive injuries that this team has had this year, it was noticeable. They were struggling for a while to figure out, okay, how are we going to be an effective defense? And, I was kind of on the record earlier this season saying, I think McDermott's task right now is to just find a way to make this defense average. Because if the defense can be average, I think the offense is good enough for this team to go places. Well, I got to tell you, McDermott has done more than make this defense average because since week 8, they have been, a top 5 defense in the league. And a lot of the people in analytics had some posts on this today. I know that Aaron Schatz was out there talking about it. The inventor of DVOA, Ben Baldwin was out there discussing this. And a lot of the charts that I pulled up and the stuff I've looked into indicate the same thing. And this was something that even a lot of media pundits before the game were talking about. Mina Kimes had a tweet that she put out there on the 15th talking about how the Bills defend passes to the middle of the field since they've lost Matt Milano, and they were 31st in passer rating, 30th in success rate, and 26th in EPA per play. And, I went and kind of looked at that and I said, well, yeah, that's true. But if you filter out those couple games immediately after they lost Milano and you look at just week 8 and on, the Bills actually were the 3rd best defense in yards per play surrendered to the middle of the field. And they were, above average in success rate. So it felt like they were, in the data that I saw, it felt like they were starting to kind of figure things out. And I think that just kind of all culminated into, wow, the defense might be back.
Yeah, I think there's empirical evidence to show it. I mean, since their bye week, and granted, you're only talking about 2 games, but they're the 12th EPA defense right now. And as far as dropback EPA against quarterbacks, they're sitting pretty at 7th. So it's encouraging to see them come out of the bye and seem like they've made some key adjustments. And, in this game particularly, one thing I really liked was how they were using their safeties and kind of that late post-snap flip where you might have Poyer come up closer to the line and have Cam Lewis drop back or vice versa, or you might have Taylor Rapp come up, kind of mixing looks up and trying to really provide support from the middle of the field. Obviously, while Tyrell Dotson, I do think has played better ball and has been really better in run defense, I don't fully still trust him in pass coverage, which is why I'm glad that they're mixing the safeties in. And these are adjustments that I think that Sean McDermott needed to make because, again, you're in the most crucial stretch of your season. So you want to see an encouraging step forward from them, given some really ugly performances in the wake of the injuries. And I think you're getting that now when you go up against Patrick Mahomes, even though his receiving core isn't what it used to be. And Travis Kelce is getting, quadruple teamed at times, and you're talking about, Kadarius Toney's blunders and all this stuff. That's still Patrick Mahomes. That's still the best quarterback in football. And you went into Kansas City and you held them to 17. And now you go up against one of the top rated passing offenses in the league by all metrics, and you shut them down completely. And your pass rush is stellar and your back end coverage is able to hold things up. I also think Dallas was really trying to air the ball out a little too much to a point where it put them in a bad bind. And I don't quite understand why. Like, it literally felt like, and I don't know if you agree with this, but it felt like they finally figured out the proper game plan they should have been going with on that final drive where they actually scored the touchdown, which was like, hey, there's a lot of pressure. Maybe we should have a bailout option 5 or 10 yards down the field so he's not trying to hold the ball as long. And it just did
Yeah.
not work. Like it was really encouraging to watch that performance from the Bills defense. And it's making me very excited because, you're going up against the Chargers team, and we'll get into this topic a little bit, that's missing Justin Herbert and is going to have a backup that might not have even played for the team coming in. You might not see Keenan Allen. You might be dealing with a really hampered offense. And then you face New England with Bailey Zappi and, kind of an inconsistent receiving core and inconsistent weapons in general. You had to play really good defensive ball in these two games before you got the softer part of your schedule. And now you did, and you're getting that to boot. And essentially it feels like they're sharpening the sword when they play Miami eventually. So what do you think about that? I mean, what do you think about them going into the final stretch of this year?
Yeah. I mean, it's, there's another stat that I like to look at, which is, drive score percentage. And, drive score percentage is, how our team is finishing drives. It looks at how many drives end in at least points, any points, whether it's a field goal or a touchdown. And, again, that was one of those things that typically, that stat sometimes might not be the best at kind of predicting what the future is going to look like, because typically if a team is successful on a play in, play out basis, generally speaking, the points will come even if the drive score percentage is not consistent. But I think it still is a good indicator to look at kind of where the team is at and where they're heading. And, looking at the last 2 weeks in drive score percentage for the Bills defense that they've surrendered, this was the worst game adjusted for garbage time. This is the worst drive score percentage that the Dallas Cowboys have posted this entire season, which is a huge win for the Bills, keeping that team well below average. And same thing with the Chiefs the week before. It was, I believe, their fourth worst drive score percentage on the season, which again was below average. And we have an improvement this week versus the previous week. And it was, again, an improvement upon the Eagles game, So yeah. I think things seem to be trending, in the right direction. I feel like McDermott, especially during the bye week, seems to have done a nice job self-scouting and figuring out what works and what doesn't work, especially during crunch time when they need to, get that big stop. It felt like, and this is something that, Eric and Ant covered quite a bit, in that crunch time, he was just kind of bringing all these exotic pressures and whatnot and putting, a defensive end in the middle of the line, and they weren't getting the push and they weren't affecting the quarterback the way they were during the game when they just left their defensive tackles in. And now it seems like they're kind of, even though he's bringing blitzes occasionally when, when he needs to, they're not like, I feel like they got a really healthy rotation going on the defensive line. I love that they ran some stunts, with where you had Jordan Phillips lined up as an end and then, stunting around. And of course that was a play that he got injured on, but I just feel like he's really found, the avenues by which his defense has been most successful this season. And he's now starting to lean on that and really maximizing his players' abilities in the right situations, right? Terrell Dodson is a perfect example of this. Here's a guy that, has always kind of looked pretty good in run support, right? But in pass coverage, he's always left a lot to be desired. And here we are getting him on the field at the right time to support at the right moments. And then when those big third downs, roll up, they're taking him off the field and going to that, multi-safety look. So I think, I really think it's been McDermott showing that he has a solid understanding of his players, of what works and what doesn't work. And it's really coming in at exactly the right time.
Right. And things you wanted to see after the bye week ended, right? You're going in off that horrible loss to Philly. Your season's on the line. Those are the modifications you need to see, getting the most out of the depth players you have in their role. Again, Steve brought up Cam Lewis. That's someone who had a great game yesterday, both in coverage and run support. It was just so encouraging. And the fact that you're getting that at this point in the year, again, after what is many consider the back half of the gauntlet of this schedule, that's just great to see. And I'm excited to see how he continues to mix it up too, because it felt like in this game, there was pressure and there were 5-man pressures, but it felt like he wasn't as dialed up on the blitz as he wanted, or as he like has been in the past. It felt like they were really trying to make an effort to show things pre-snap and then drop back into coverage and really try to force Dak to guess and hold, so that there was the opportunity for those 4 or 5-man pressures to hit home. And man, they hit home. And one underrated part of this defensive line, or really this pass rush, that I do think needs to be stated too, is the health of Greg Rousseau and the health of Leonard Floyd. Because, you know, we saw earlier how hampered Rousseau was from that foot injury. Like, just not the same pass rusher. He could still play, he could still seal the edge, but it felt like he became a little less impactful because of it. And then Floyd, you know, Floyd has been pretty good all year. He's in double-digit sacks and just earned another $1 million. So shout out to him. But it's the combination of the two, and the health of Rousseau and the healing Leonard Floyd, and then seeing, you know, again, the continued emergence of Ed Oliver and the slowly getting there, but still not quite there yet, Von Miller, that I feel like is really aiding this team at a crucial stretch. And again, the more they heal up and the more you can depend on those 4-man rush and 5-man rushes versus having to send 6 or 7, I think is really going to benefit this team, especially when you go up against eventually Miami. And then if you make the playoffs, you know, some of those really juggernaut offenses. So very excited to see how this team continues to trend. And I'm just going to ask you, before we preview this matchup, any final thoughts before we move on from Dallas and Buffalo?
No, you know, I think we kind of covered all, man. We know how this team has looked. Now it's, can they keep up with that kind of consistency, that kind of execution? And that, you know, is moving us on to 2 games here where we're going into a week where I think we, don't really know what to expect based on all the changes that organization has been through. And then, you can't look too far ahead. You got to take care of business, every one of these games down the line. So yeah, let's just dive into it.
Fully agree. And yes, I'm excited to preview the I don't even know if you call it unknown. I don't know what the hell you call that team right now. But before we do, I want to just say to everyone watching right now, again, thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of Under Review. If you could please be as kind as to like this video, it would mean the world to me. It would mean the world to everyone at Cover One. Again, your like, showing support on this video, sharing it, anything you can do to help get it into all football fan algorithms is truly appreciated, and it really helps us out. So just want to remind you to do that. But let's get into it. The Chargers, like I said, some brutal defensive statistics for them. We were talking before we went live about just kind of how rough this defense has looked. I mean, goes without saying that a team just hung 63 on them. But even beyond that, 24th and 23rd in defensive pass and rush EPA. They are just, for someone under Brandon Staley, who's a defensive coach, just could not maximize the talent he had. Their pass rush was really good this year, but again, you're losing Joey Bosa. I know he's nursing the sprain and there's potential he could come back, but even if he does, you don't know how healthy he is. So really, Khalil Mack is your one dependable edge rusher. What can you even say about this team? How do you expect them to kind of attack this Bills offense? Like, what do you think is the game plan if you're the Chargers?
Well, I think the challenging thing is that they have a new coaching staff. They're working with a new quarterback, and that quarterback might not even be the same guy that played in the last week. I don't know. I haven't heard if they've made any final decisions on that. Obviously, they brought in Will Grier, but even if it's not him, and I think Easton Stick is the most likely candidate to continue playing just for the continuity side of things. Like, he's only played one game last week, so you're talking about, there's tape out on this team, and you can learn what certain players are good at and what they're bad at. But, again, if you have a coaching staff that comes in and, starts putting players in positions that kind of maximize their skill sets in the same way that we just talked about how Sean McDermott has done the last, couple weeks, they could create some problems. So, how do you game plan for a game like this? So I think it is, on offense, I think the thing that you can really kind of lean on and be comfortable with is the same things that we were just praising Joe Brady about. He knows what this offense is capable of doing well, and he's going to see what that defense is doing, and he's going to react to it, to try to lean into the things that he thinks is going to work. So, offensively, I think that they should be just fine. Defensively, I think is the thing that, is interesting. They do have some firepower on offense. Now, granted, they're working with a QB that didn't look tremendous last week, but they have some skill players in positions that can give you problems. So ultimately, I think it's going to be a lot of a game where we're going to see a lot of a feeling out period to begin with, I think you're going to see a Bills offense and defense. It's going to be kind of trying to keep it very basic, to begin with, and then just kind of see how things roll from there.
Yeah, it's hard to predict or really evaluate what you don't know is coming, right? Like with this defense and how their new coach is going to kind of modify it. I don't know what the tweaks are. I don't know what the stats are because we haven't seen anything yet. So for them, it's really just, again, how are you going to be able to kind of use what you've seen on the film from them this year and kind of make an educated guess? And are you going to, take it seriously? Because I do think that you can't overlook anybody. I know, I think it's Michael Barber in our comments section said this, but you can't overlook the team. And I agree with that. I do think, however, if I had to look at one thing defensively for the Bills that I would actually be semi-concerned about, it is Austin Eckler and it is their rushing attack. If there's one thing I can say, it's this pass defense for the Bills has been exceptionally better since the bye. And I think that the Chargers can see that. And I think that the Chargers, despite all the woes and despite, the coach and the firing, aren't dumb in the sense that they're not going to see how we've defended the pass and think we need to make Easton Stick throw the ball 30 times. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that the Chargers game plan is going to be, we're going to lean on Austin Eckler because he's our best offensive player if Keenan Allen can't go, which it's possible he doesn't. So you rely on him. And the Bills right now currently rank 17th in rushing DVOA. And since the bye, haven't really been great in rushing EPA. So it's a bit concerning in that regard. But again, that's the one thing that I think the Chargers would try to exploit. And if that's your one thing and the Bills bear down and make a game plan that's focused on stopping Austin Eckler, then I think you're asking Easton Stick to beat your passing defense. And I really just don't think that's going to happen. I mean, any given Sunday, or Saturday in this case, anyone can play a sloppy game. Anyone can play a good game. And, he's in the NFL for a reason. He gets paid too. But your pass rush has been exceptional. Your back end coverage has been very good. The post snap looks that you've been offering teams have been confusing. You're in the midst of a huge coaching change defensively. So for as far as the Bills offense and Joe Brady, you could see some wrinkles that they haven't thrown out yet that they could try out on the Chargers. It does feel like a game that, you don't take lightly just because of the circumstances of your season. But also when you look at talent and you look at coaching and you look at the trends these teams are on, it's hard for me to sit here and say that beyond the rushing attack for the Chargers, maybe getting some wicks off on the Bills defense, there's a lot there that I could sit here and be worried about. But I'm going to knock on some wood. And I'm going to say that I don't want to jinx it. And it's still a team that you got to beat. And I mean, what else do you think about this matchup, really, when it comes to Chargers offense, defense? What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, I threw this out there today. I said, it's hard to know what their defense is going to look like this week. But, I went and looked it up. And believe it or not, on the season, the Eagles and the Bengals both have a worse defense in EPA per attempt surrendered than the Chargers, which shocked me when I looked it up. Now, obviously, there's quality of competition adjustments and whatnot. When you look at it from like DVOA, which attempts to do that, the Chargers have been worse there. But, DVOA is not a perfect stat either, right? And so ultimately, what the Bills need to do is avoid doing exactly what happened to Dallas this week, which is coming off of a massive win. Fans are always concerned about, right, the letdown game.
Right.
I'm not as concerned about it for the Bills at this point in time because I feel like they know at the end of the day what the situation is. They don't have the wiggle room anymore, right? And so there's no room for cockiness or overconfidence at this point in time. They seem to be dialed in, knowing what the task is week in, week out, like those more dominant Bills teams that we've seen in the past, like the one that, won 12 games last year. So, predicting what the Chargers are going to look like or do, I think this, unless you have a good history or understanding of what that coaching staff has done in the past and kind of what their backgrounds are, which I have not looked into, I think it's hard to say, but, stick to the basics, come out, play hard, feel things out and just play a clean ball game and come home with the win healthy. That's the key.
Charles G just drops this absolute heater of a comment. We ain't losing to a quarterback named Easton. Easton Stick. I thought
Easton
it was funny.
Stick.
That's incredible. Yeah, not just Easton, but Easton Stick. I mean,
Easton Stick.
the hockey stick memes were the funniest part because it's like, oh my God, there really is a brand called Easton and they really do make sticks. But no, listen, again, you can't overlook anybody, but I'm glad you brought up the point about where they are because you're in a situation where every game is precious, every single one. And you just went out and played two of the hardest games you're going to play this season. One you won handedly, one you got taken down to the wire. There is no room for you to look past anybody. I don't care if this team decided to have like a head coach by like vote and they had, a Chargers fan running the show who's just really good at Madden. Like, it doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is that this team comes out of the gates hot and treats it like it's the Super Bowl and is able to put up the points they need to put up and has just an easy game. I feel like this season, very few games, and especially against the teams you didn't think they'd be easy games against. So it was kind of stressful the whole time because you're wondering when they'll come back, Miami, Dallas. Like, they need to just go against a team that is a bad team and beat a bad team. Make an example out of them. Show them that when you're a good team, we can beat you. And when you're a bad team, we can beat you too. Don't let Easton Stick any fluky deep passes. Don't let any stupid things that blown assignments or wide open Quentin Johnston, who's also struggling this year, get open and beat you 30 yards down the field. Don't let Austin Eckler go wild and don't let their pass rush dominate or anything dumb. Like, no dumb ball.
Yeah.
And just play a clean game. Beat a team that's struggling in the midst of a coaching change that's going to find a new coach and draft high this year. Just win the game you're supposed to win. Make everyone feel stress-free because you have another one of these games after the Chargers. So you can't, look at the Patriots in 2 weeks and be like, well, we don't have to worry about the Chargers because the Patriots. Like, you got to take each game one game at a time, no matter how many bad teams are in front of you. Like, it just needs to be handled. And I'm praying it gets handled because there's just no excuses from this team anymore. And there's no room for error.
Right. Did you know, I just found this out. Did you know that Easton Stick has the record for most wins by a starting quarterback in Division I FCS history?
Really?
He was 49-3. He was 49-3, North Dakota State University.
Oh, and DSU.
Yeah.
I did not know that. And, good for you, Easton Stick. Listen, I mean, like I said, he's a professional, man. Like, it gets so overlooked. Like, when you have these guys come and play quarterback and you never heard of them and you're just like laughing at it. But like Tommy DeVito, man, that dude's going to be like a local legend for a long time, especially if the Giants somehow beat Philly, which, I mean, Philly's a beatable team. We didn't do it, but the Seahawks were just able to. And you've seen the woes on their defense and even offense. Like, if the Giants can make Tommy DeVito work, it just proves to you that these guys go through the ringer. They are, polished. They've played their whole lives. And like, it also shows you how hard it is to be an NFL quarterback. Cause like, this man went 49-3 in college and we're talking about him like he's a scrub. It's like, dude's an NFL player. Like, he's one of the very few, like, lowest percentile ever to be an athlete and be in this position. But again, you can't overlook him, man. You just got to play a clean game.
Yeah, he's been a professional football player for a long time. And, when guys like Tommy DeVito and Zach Wilson and, just all kinds of guys have won games in this league, because they've just kind of hung around and been there. I mean, look at the night that Drew Lock has the other night, right? I mean, just incredible to watch the success that he had down the stretch. So, it's not to say that I'm overly nervous about this game because I'm really not. The Bills are a better team. I felt that way about many of the games this season. They got a better roster, better coaching staff, better quarterback. They should win this game, right? Mm-hmm. But any given Sunday, that's what you got to watch out for.
100%. So, I mean, Adam, any final thoughts on this matchup? Anything that you think, we haven't talked about enough? Any X factors? Just something that you think we can expect to see this Saturday on Peacock, unfortunately.
I think the most interesting thing that I'm going to be paying attention to is again, kind of the run pass balance in this game. Now that's what I'm going to be watching. Now that the Bills have put on tape what they're capable of with James Cook, with the running game, at some point that swing, right, where teams are going to start kind of bringing their safeties down further and putting more players into the box. Like, when are we going to see that adjustment? And is it going to be this week? Because if it's this week, get ready. Maybe we see Josh Allen start uncorking some downfield and Gabe Davis lights it up and has a 3 touchdown day, right? I mean, that's a totally possible and plausible outcome to this game. If they say, all right, well, we see what you're doing with James Cook the last few weeks. We're gonna take that away from you. All right, fine. Let's let Josh Allen sling it again and start attacking downfield. So that is the thing that I'm kind of most interested about watching and seeing what happens this week. But outside of that, I can't. It's really hard to think of much of anything else. That's what I'm going to be paying attention to.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm going to be looking for as well. And I kind of feel in my bones that this is going to be like Allen's kind of not magnum opus game, but a game where he kind of goes back and pads the stats and the passing metrics a little bit. Because again, you've seen kind of how their offense has played these past couple of weeks, and it's been a bit more methodical. It's been a bit more run heavy, really trying to kind of focus on keeping things short or intermediate, very few explosives. And again, you're playing a tough defense in Kansas City that really did limit that because of Snead and McDuffie just playing really good coverage on Diggs and Tavis. But I think this is the game where teams are going to start respecting James Cook, which in turn means they're going to forget about what Josh Allen could do. And you're going to see the other part of this Bills offense that you should worry about in the playoffs, which is Josh Allen and the ability to be explosive. And I think, again, games like this where you're going up against a team that hasn't been good, that's kind of lost their way, fires their coach, nothing to really play for, but also nothing to lose. This is a game where you kind of want to make yourself feel even better, right? You come off a big win. You don't want to, again, have that letdown game. You want to keep the confidence going, especially with the little margin for error you have. I think this is the game where you're really going to try and dial things up deep for Allen, try to get him throwing the ball downfield more, because really it feels like there's been this kind of missing nature in the consistency of the Bills' deep passing game that I really want to start seeing again. And, last year it kind of developed late, right? We didn't start seeing it really emerge until the final few weeks of the season. And ultimately that Miami game in the playoffs, it was all over the place. So I know that it can come back kind of on the drop of a hat. I'd like to see Brady just try and dial things up for Diggs, dial things up for Davis. Let's air this ball out and kind of see if we can get Allen just really working in a groove. Because if he can, and we're talking about stat padding, fun passing game, Josh Allen again, I really do think that that's just going to make teams fear you and respect you more, to the point where, whatever coverage they're offering you is going to get beat by somebody.
Yeah, some of those crossers for Hardy too, because that worked pretty well. I think it's his speed starting to play a role in the offense in that way. Is going to be helpful down the stretch.
Yeah, and I see we have a comment here from Spin, and I'm going to read it here. So we got, how about Bean drafting Bernard in the 3rd round, where everyone was like, WTF? Yeah, man. I mean, Adam, you want to take this one? What do you think?
Yeah, I think just like how we were talking about Spencer Brown and all our fears in August about how they were going to look at right tackle, that was the other major one, right? Coming out of training camp was, what are they going to look like at the middle linebacker position? And, when they drafted Terrell Bernard, a lot of people were like, what the heck kind of draft pick is this? And now they've taken Dorian Williams again, and people are like, whoa, why did we double up on linebackers? And, now you're seeing it. I think his progress, especially on the mental side of things, right? I mean, we knew kind of coming out that Bernard was that, even though he's a smaller stature, he was kind of immediately compared to Matt Milano, and he was kind of like that downfield, hard tackling guy, but maybe slightly undersized for the position. But, I think shedding blocks, for example, is something that people talk about quite a bit. And, the bigger thing to, making successful run fits is not shedding blocks, but never engaging with them in the first place. And Bernard has done so much on the mental side of this game. We even saw it this week in terms of getting the gaps realigned and making sure people in the right places, especially in scramble drills. He's just done an unbelievable job this season. I think you can't give him enough praise for how much he's developed and what he's meant to this defense. Because again, that's an area that going into the season, everyone was rightfully concerned, and he has just taken that concern completely away.
I was certainly skeptical. I again, I did a linebacker show over the summer where I thought that just based on the veteran presence of him, Terrell Dodson was going to be the starting Mike, just for the reason of like he knows the scheme, he's been here, so like why not just roll with who you got until he's dethroned by somebody else who I thought might have been Dorian Williams, but it ended up being Terrell Bernard because we didn't see much of him. The sample size wasn't there. I had no idea what to expect, but him taking over the role, you're kind of sitting here thinking like, all right, like let's see how it goes. I have some concerns and we'll just hopefully they'll be quelled by his play. And he's been exceptional. I mean, I think just again, and Anthony showed this, Eric showed this, I know you've put it together, like the pre-snap communication, how he's able to just get people in the right place when he can kind of yank a DT and pull him to the right spot and kind of call things out. That is something that for a second-year guy to be inheriting a role left behind by Tremaine Edmunds, I genuinely didn't believe we'd see that quickly. And we've seen it. And I don't remember if it was you or someone else who made a comment about how the veterans of the team were just like lauding over his communication skills. And that was all there when he was at Baylor. And again, like the physical traits of him were all there. It was really just like, can he play this game in the NFL? Can he diagnose things and be a quick trigger? And he is in every way, whether it's the run game and knowing where he needs to get somebody in place to, blow up a run like he did with, I believe it was Taylor Rapp who made that tackle in the backfield at the goal line. And then you talk about some of his play and where he can kind of see the gap and attack it and have the speed to get through and also understanding when it's time to kind of put the burst into motion or drop back into coverage. Like he is just so refined. And I have to give credit to not only Bean for drafting him, but again, Sean McDermott for his development and Bobby Babbitt for his development, because like that is just such a massive hole that you filled where you lost Tremaine Edmunds to a contract and you're thinking that this is going to be a soft spot, and it ends up being one of your biggest strengths and really something that I think has secured you for the next couple of years at that position for a guy who's just really playing exceptional ball in a second year.
Yeah, it's really incredible. I think we all would have been happy going into the season if anyone's performance there was just adequate or even like replacement level. Just don't let it hurt you. You know what I mean? And instead, it's been a position of strength and something that has really galvanized the defense as a whole. And just hats off to Bean, to McDermott, to Babbage, as you said, like the entire staff and to him, for running with that opportunity and obviously putting in the time to mentally prepare for what it meant to play that role just as much as physically prepare. It's really been a breath of fresh air.
Absolutely. And you know something, man, like why I love doing this show and why I love this comment section is like this comment from Roy where it's like, I was one of the many that said at the beginning of the season, we didn't have a starting caliber middle linebacker. Like, don't worry. I said similar things. And I think what I love the most about our discourse and like this show and where I want everyone to understand is like, it like, we'll all speculate. And like, I don't feel bad about saying what I said because at the time we didn't know, like, you know what I mean? Like we had no clue. All we could base it off was college. So like, I love that. Like we can all come here and be like, damn, man, like I was freaking wrong about this guy. Like it's a beautiful thing. It's beautiful discourse. And like
you weren't alone, Roy. Like even all of us in the Cover One group chat, during training camp, when this was all going on, we're like, okay, where can we find a middle linebacker? Like, is there anybody out there that's getting cut, or like, who can we trade for? There was that conversation was happening internally with us too. So, the fact that we were all pleasantly surprised by the way he's played is just a nice bonus in the year.
How about and I'm actually blanking on the name. I can't even remember the name off the top of my head, but the free agent from Houston that we brought in as to be the veteran that we thought was going to inherit the role. Like Bernard's going to start here, and when he gets used to the playbook, he's going to come in and take it over. And then he retired, and then Bernard ran with it. Like that's a beautiful thing. It's just seeing these picks happen before you really see them come into fruition. And I think that this is something that should be said about Bean's drafting and really how we look at prospects as a whole is sometimes it's going to take time. Sometimes the plan is for the future and not for right now. And maybe there's someone on an expiring contract or, set to retire soon or something along those lines. And you draft someone to fill in their spot where it doesn't necessarily make sense right away, but you see why in time. There's another really good comment here, and I'm actually angry I didn't star it. Oh, yeah, from Spin again. People were calling Oliver a bust even after they extended him. Like Ed Oliver definitely wasn't like Aaron Donald level, like top of the league caliber his first couple of years. I know he had some injuries and they kind of hampered his play and everything, but look at him now, man. And look at like what happens when you just hedge your bets on your own players and see what they do and see where they can go. And I just think like, this is why I'll always defend like a Brandon Beane drafting process, because it's not always going to hit. The success rate will always be hit or miss for any GM, but you're looking at some of the homegrown talent at some of the positions of need, and you're seeing tangible results that matter in these games at key positions. And I'm excited about it.
And the biggest thing too is how long has Ed Oliver been a Buffalo Bill, right? This is his 5th season or 6th season, right? Somewhere along those lines. So, I mean, here's a guy who is now just shown constant annual improvement in his game. And this is the best season that he's had as a pro. And for a guy who, has been around for this much time, to now be having his best season, after he signed his contract, not before, right? I think that just speaks volumes to the type of culture that, Beane and McDermott have built, for these guys to earn their money and then, play up to their contracts. How often do you see in organizations where guys do not earn their contract? Has that happened very much here in Buffalo since Beane and McDermott have been here? I don't think so.
No, it's been all, again, like a very good amount. And, again, like mid-round picks, we'd like to see a little more out of their like 2nd and 3rd. It's usually later guys, but like, it's still been very encouraging to see players that you're taking in these later rounds at key positions being able to last. Like, again, Dane Jackson this year, like having a very good season, probably his best as a Bill. And you took this guy in one of the final rounds. Like, you see this output from Christian Benford, who's lapped your 1st round pick. Like, you're seeing contributions. I know he's not a fan favorite, but Gabe Davis was taken in the 4th, and like he'd become a viable part of the room. Like, and I know that everyone, by the way, it's Christian Kirksey. Thank you all for reminding me. I also appreciate Roy Collins saying that guy, because that's basically what I said. Sorry, Christian Kirksey. I literally blanked so hard because I'd known the name and it just completely escaped my mind. But yeah, it's just, I think the thing I've always wanted to say is just like, when you see a pick and it might not make sense, I feel like it's going to make sense at some point. And I think the Terrell Bernard example is just kind of reinstilling my faith in the future plans for this team. And now they got 10 picks to work with. So, you might see some off the wall stuff, like maybe them take like 2 wide receivers, which kind of hoping for. But either way, man, that's my take on that.
Or maybe they trade for a wide receiver. That's the one thing that I wonder about with Brandon Beane. Granted, when they signed Diggs, when they traded for Diggs, right? Josh Allen was still a very young player. They probably valued bringing in someone with some consistency, and maybe they feel like maybe they feel very strongly about someone in the draft and they're willing, or multiple guys in the draft, and they're willing to kind of more roll the dice on taking that younger player and having him on that cheap contract. But, that wide receiver 1 and that wide receiver 2 position is so important, that, Beane's previous behavior, trading for a guy like Diggs rather than, drafting Justin Jefferson, which they could have done, right? I just wonder if that's more the direction that, Beane would like to go with the guy that is kind of going to be, or needs to be, the heir apparent to Stephon Diggs. Because, Stephon is 30 years old. This is right where you start to see some of the drop-offs start to happen with receivers. And generally speaking, I think a lot of people believe that his game is going to age fairly gracefully because it's, kind of built off of his route running. But, I think that the amount of usage that Diggs has seen, especially early in the year, I think it's affecting him a little bit. We've seen it in the drops, right? That he's been suffering as of late. Now he made a couple beautiful catches last game too. So, I mean, he's still Stephon Diggs, but it's something that you got to watch out for. And I'll be really intrigued to see what they do at that wide receiver 2 position this summer.
Yeah, I 100%. This is my take. We are not in draft season yet. I don't want to be in draft season for a very long time. But my take is that receiver is the no-brain pick in the 1st round, because I think you need to add that vertical speed to go along with Diggs' kind of tactician approach. And I think I don't believe that the team, this personal vibes, nothing concrete. I don't have any sort of basis on this, but personal vibes is I don't think the team retains Davis. And for that reason, I think it puts a lot more emphasis on that first pick being a receiver. And this receiving class is deep. I'm really, really pumped to watch it. But I think vertical speed, someone who's a true threat, someone you could do with motion, someone you can move around similar to Diggs, which there are options for that in this class. I think that's where you're going to go with it. So sneak preview of my eventual draft show where I talk about what the hell this team needs. And again, I am praying that happens in February and not anytime sooner. But Adam, this was a super fun episode. I appreciate you being here, man. I want you to let all of the good people in our chat know where they can find you, what you got going on.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me on, Joe. This was great. You guys can find me on Twitter at Sharpen Pencil. I'm the film coordinator at Cover One. It's right down there in the window. If you want to see some cool Bill stats, some advanced analytics stuff on Bill's opponents, general stuff about the league, I'm kind of like just constantly inquisitive about this stuff and digging into it. So please give me a follow. Feel free to shoot me a tweet and ask me questions. I'm happy to even dig stuff up for you if you're interested in me finding something for you. So, if you're not following me, I would appreciate you doing so. And Joe, I can't thank you enough for having me on. This is a blast.
I can't thank you enough for being here, man. And yeah, guys, if you're not following Adam, go follow him. Again, like I feel like in this season, the need for a voice of reason has never been bigger. Never. And I consider Adam one of the many voices of reason in our fandom. Like the data he provides, the perspective he provides are all things that I feel like when we are dealing in emotional times can make you take a breath of fresh air and see things in an objective way. It might not always be good. It might not always be bad in terms of how this team is performing, but you have a lens to see that. And that is offered from Adam's data, which I appreciate because it helps me gain perspective. And I'm sure many fans who follow him. So please do yourselves the favor of following him. It really will help your, football knowledge and insight. And again, thank you so much for being here, man. And usually we roll the Cover One premium read. Unfortunately, with the technical difficulty earlier, I am trying to bypass any video rolls for any mess up. So I will just say to all of you in the description below, as you know, the Cover One pass, please, if you are not already a subscriber, give that a look and sign up. It is well worth your time. The premium Slack channel is great. You get insight from all of the Cover One guys on just so many different topics. If you want to learn film, if you're trying to talk about the draft, all of these great things are available to you 24/7. I cannot recommend it enough. So please check the description below. If you are interested, we are happy to have you sign up and you get some awesome perks to boot. But for Adam, my name is Joe DeRosa. You can find me on Twitter at @show_DeRosa. To all of you guys in the chat, I really, really appreciate your contributions. This is a really fun discussion tonight. I also love this final comment from Spin. What vertical first-round talent is going to be available at pick 32?
I saw that one.
Hell yeah. I love your enthusiasm. I am right there with you. I'm hoping that we can roll. I'm hoping that they don't overlook the Chargers and that this team can have a nice, easy win, beat the Patriots the following week, beat Miami, go on a playoff run, and do all of the great things we are hoping for. But one game at a time, that starts this Saturday. Everybody, I hope if you are celebrating Christmas, you have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful holiday. Please be safe with your families. Enjoy some eggnog. And if you think eggnog's gross, then enjoy something else like hot cocoa. I'm really pumped.
Or put some rum in it.
Or put some rum in it. Or put some rum in your eggnog. Or just take shots of rum. Whatever your fancy is. We don't judge here on Under Review. The only thing I judge is the games that this team plays. But no, super appreciative, you guys. Hope you have a great holiday. I'm still finding out if I'm going to be able to do a show next week. It depends on travel. So if not, I will announce that. But if not, then I will see you after the new year to do another show with hopefully a positive, fun episode for all of you. But as always, please subscribe to Cover One. Check out both of our socials. And as always, go Bills. We will see you soon. Take care. Happy holidays.
Go Bills.